For thousands of years, the gods of ancient Greece shaped one of the greatest mythologies ever created. They ruled the skies and the seas. They inspired heroes, started wars, cursed entire bloodlines, and decided the fate of every mortal who walked the earth. Some protected humanity, others loved punishing it. But before there was Mount Olympus, before Zeus ever threw a lightning bolt, before Hades ruled the dead, the universe belonged to something far older. Here is the complete story of the Greek gods. According to Greek mythology, everything began with chaos. Not chaos in the modern sense of disorder, but an endless void that existed before the world itself. From that emptiness came Gaia, the earth. Then came Uranus, the sky, who became Gaia's companion. Together, they brought the first great generation of divine beings into existence, the Titans. But their family was anything but peaceful. Uranus feared the power of his own children. Rather than allowing them to grow, he imprisoned them deep within the earth, leaving Gaia in constant pain. Unable to watch her children suffer any longer, Gaia forged a massive sickle and asked them to stand against their father. Only one answered: Cronus. When Uranus descended from the heavens, Cronus emerged from hiding and attacked him, overthrowing the ruler of the universe. With Uranus defeated, the Titans inherited control of the cosmos. For a time, it seemed as though peace had finally arrived. But history was about to repeat itself. Cronus married his sister, Rhea, and together they had several children. Then came another terrifying prophecy. One day, one of his own children would overthrow him, just as he had overthrown his father. Instead of taking the risk, Cronus chose a horrifying solution. Every time Rhea gave birth, he swallowed the newborn whole. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. One after another, they disappeared into their father's stomach. When Rhea became pregnant again, she refused to lose another child. She secretly gave birth on the island of Crete and hid her youngest son in a cave where he could grow up in safety. His name was Zeus. To fool Cronus, she wrapped a stone in baby clothes and handed it to him. Without hesitation, Cronus swallowed it, completely unaware that the child destined to overthrow him was still alive. Years later, Zeus returned. He forced Cronus to release his swallowed siblings, and together they declared war on the Titans. The conflict became known as the Titanomachy. For 12 brutal years, neither side could gain the advantage. Everything changed when Zeus freed the Cyclopes and the 100-handed giants from their ancient prison. In gratitude, the Cyclopes forged legendary weapons for the three brothers. Zeus received the thunderbolt. Poseidon claimed the trident. Hades was given the helm of darkness, allowing him to vanish from sight. Armed with these gifts, the younger gods finally defeated the Titans. Most were cast into Tartarus, a prison buried deep beneath the underworld. Their reign was over. A new age had begun. After the victory, the three brothers divided the universe by drawing lots. Zeus became ruler of the skies. Poseidon claimed the seas. Hades inherited the underworld. Together, they formed the foundation of the Olympian gods, and above them all stood one figure, Zeus. As king of the Olympians, he ruled from the towering peaks of Mount Olympus, watching over both gods and mortals alike. His weapon, the thunderbolt, became one of the most recognizable symbols in all of mythology. A single strike could level mountains, destroy armies, or remind humanity that the king of the gods was always watching. To the ancient Greeks, every storm carried his presence. A flash of lightning was not simply weather, it was Zeus making his power known, but his responsibilities stretched far beyond the skies. Zeus was believed to oversee justice, law, hospitality, and the sacred bond between strangers. Welcoming guests into your home was considered a duty protected by Zeus himself, and those who mistreated travelers risked earning the king's anger. Despite his authority, Zeus was far from perfect. He was famous for countless affairs with both goddesses and mortal women, fathering many of Greek mythology's most important figures: Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Hermes, Perseus, Hercules, and many more. These relationships often sparked conflict throughout Greek mythology, largely because of Zeus's wife, Hera. She rarely punished Zeus himself. Instead, she directed her fury toward the women he loved and the children they bore. Many of Greece's greatest heroes spent their lives suffering because of a grudge they inherited before they were even born. While Zeus ruled the skies, his brother Poseidon became master of the seas, but limiting him to the ocean doesn't tell the whole story. Poseidon was also the god of earthquakes, earning the title Earth Shaker. The ancient Greeks believed violent tremors beneath the ground were signs that Poseidon had struck the earth with his mighty trident. He was also closely associated with horses, animals admired for their speed, beauty, and strength. Although Poseidon had a palace on Mount Olympus, he spent much of his time beneath the waves in a magnificent underwater kingdom. For sailors, fishermen, and merchants, his favor meant everything. Before setting sail, many offered sacrifices and prayers, hoping calm waters would carry them safely home. If Poseidon was offended, the consequences could be deadly. Few gods held grudges longer. One famous example involved King Minos of Crete. Each year, Minos promised to sacrifice his finest bull to honor Poseidon. But when he saw an unusually beautiful white bull, he decided to keep it for himself and offer a lesser animal instead. Poseidon noticed the deception. Rather than punishing Minos directly, he cursed the king's wife with an unnatural love for the magnificent bull. Their union produced one of mythology's most infamous monsters, the Minotaur, a creature with the body of a man and the head of a bull, forever trapped inside the labyrinth beneath Crete. Of the three brothers, Hades is probably the most misunderstood. Modern culture often portrays him as the Greek equivalent of the devil. The myths tell a very different story. Hades was not the god of death, he ruled over the dead. There is an important difference. His responsibility was not deciding when people died, but ensuring the underworld remained in perfect order once they arrived. Unlike Zeus or Poseidon, Hades rarely interfered with the lives of mortals. He ruled quietly from a vast kingdom hidden beneath the earth, alongside his queen Persephone. Reaching his realm was no simple task. Every soul first had to cross the river Styx, aboard the boat of Charon, the mysterious ferryman. But passage came at a price. That is why ancient Greeks often buried their dead with coins placed over their eyes or beneath their tongue. Without payment, a soul was believed to wander the riverbanks forever, never finding peace. Beyond the river waited Cerberus, the enormous three-headed dog that guarded the gates of the underworld. His job was simple: keep the dead from escaping and make sure the living never entered uninvited. Once inside, every soul stood before three judges. Their lives were weighed and their destination decided. Heroes and the truly virtuous entered Elysium, a peaceful paradise. Ordinary people continued on to the asphodel meadows, where most souls spent eternity. The worst criminals were condemned to Tartarus, a place of endless punishment where even the defeated titans remained imprisoned. Despite ruling such a grim realm, Hades himself was rarely portrayed as cruel. More often than not, he simply carried out the role fate had assigned him. If Zeus represented authority, Hera represented the institution of marriage itself. As queen of the Olympians, she protected women, childbirth, and family life, making her one of the most respected goddesses in ancient Greece, but she was also one of its most feared. Hera never forgot a betrayal, and she almost never forgave one. Zeus's endless affairs became a constant source of humiliation, and rather than challenging the king of the gods directly, Hera often unleashed her anger on those caught in the middle. One of her greatest targets was Hercules, the son of Zeus and a mortal woman. Even as a baby, Hera sent two enormous serpents into his cradle, hoping to end his life before it truly began. Instead, the infant grabbed each snake with his tiny hands and strangled them to death. It was only the beginning. Years later, Hera drove Hercules into a fit of madness that caused him to kill his own family. Consumed by guilt, He sought redemption through the famous 12 labors, challenges so dangerous that few believed anyone could survive them. Ironically, the very hatred Hera showed him helped create one of the greatest heroes in all of Greek mythology. Unlike nearly every other god, Athena entered the world in a way no one could have imagined. Before she was born, Zeus received a frightening prophecy. If Metis, the goddess of wisdom, gave birth to a son, that child would one day overthrow him, just as Zeus had overthrown Cronus. Determined to prevent history from repeating itself, Zeus swallowed Metis while she was still pregnant. Problem solved, or so he thought. Sometime later, Zeus developed an unbearable headache. The pain grew so intense that he ordered Hephaestus to split open his skull with a massive axe. The moment the blow landed, Athena burst from his head, fully grown, dressed in gleaming armor, shield in one hand, spear in the other. According to legend, she emerged with a battle cry that echoed across the heavens. From that moment on, Athena became the goddess of wisdom, strategy, and disciplined warfare. Unlike Ares, who embodied bloodshed and chaos, Athena represented intelligence, planning, and fighting only when necessary. She became the patron of inventors, craftsmen, philosophers, and military commanders alike. Many of Greek mythology's greatest heroes relied on her guidance. She helped Perseus defeat Medusa. She advised Hercules during several of his impossible labors, and perhaps most famously, she watched over Odysseus throughout his long and dangerous journey home after the Trojan War. No city honored her more than Athens. According to myth, both Athena and Poseidon competed to become the city's protector. Each offered a gift. Poseidon struck the ground with his trident, causing water to burst from the earth. It was impressive, but the water was salty and could not sustain life. Athena offered something far more practical, the world's first olive tree. It provided food, oil, wood, and lasting prosperity. The other gods declared Athena the winner. The city proudly took her name. Even today, the Parthenon still stands atop the Acropolis as a reminder of the goddess who became the symbol of wisdom itself. If Athena represented the strategy of war, Ares represented everything people feared about it: violence, bloodshed, rage, and destruction without reason. Unlike many Olympians, Ares was not especially admired. Even Zeus reportedly found him unbearable. To the Greeks, Ares symbolized the terrifying side of battle, not heroic warriors defending their homeland, but soldiers consumed by anger, slaughter, and chaos. Despite this reputation, Ares found love with Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty. There was just one problem. She was already married. Her husband was Hephaestus, the master blacksmith of the gods. When he discovered the affair, he decided revenge would be far more satisfying than simple anger. He forged an impossibly thin metal net that no one could see. Then he stretched it across his bed before pretending to leave. The moment Ares and Aphrodite met in secret, the trap snapped shut. Unable to escape, the lovers remained helpless while Hephaestus summoned every Olympian to witness their humiliation. Rather than showing sympathy, the gods burst into laughter. It became one of mythology's most embarrassing scandals. Only after Poseidon persuaded Hephaestus to show mercy were the two finally released. Although Aphrodite was worshipped as the goddess of love and beauty, her influence reached much further than romance. She governed desire itself, the irresistible force capable of inspiring devotion or starting entire wars. Even her birth remains one of Greek mythology's greatest mysteries. Some traditions claim she rose from the sea foam after the remains of Uranus fell into the ocean. Others describe her as another daughter of Zeus. Whichever story is true, every version agrees on one thing: no one could match her beauty. Perhaps her most famous role came before the Trojan War. During the wedding of Peleus and Thetis, an uninvited goddess named Eris threw a golden apple among the guests. Inscribed upon it were the words, "For the fairest." Immediately, three powerful goddesses claimed it: Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Unable to settle the dispute themselves, they chose a mortal prince named Paris to decide. Each attempted to sway him, Hera promised political power. Athena offered unmatched wisdom and victory in battle. Aphrodite made a different promise. She would give him the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris accepted. That woman was Helen, already married to King Menelaus of Sparta. When Paris carried Helen back to Troy, Greece united to bring her home. What began as a single choice soon erupted into one of the greatest wars in all of mythology. Among all the Olympians, Artemis valued one thing above everything else: freedom. She was the goddess of the hunt, protector of wild animals, and guardian of the untamed wilderness. Armed with her silver bow, Artemis wandered forests and mountains with a band of loyal companions far removed from the politics of Olympus. She also swore never to marry, remaining one of the three virgin goddesses. Those who violated her privacy often paid a terrible price. One hunter named Actaeon accidentally stumbled upon Artemis while she was bathing in a secluded spring. Whether the encounter was intentional or not hardly mattered. Artemis transformed him into a stag. Unable to speak or defend himself, Actaeon fled into the forest. Moments later, his own hunting dogs caught his scent. Failing to recognize their master, they tore him apart. The story served as a warning. Even accidental disrespect toward the gods could have devastating consequences. If Athena represented wisdom, Apollo represented perfection. He was one of the most admired gods on Olympus, associated with light, music, healing, prophecy, poetry, and archery. Few deities had influence over so many different aspects of life. Apollo was often portrayed as the ideal young man: strong, handsome, intelligent, and exceptionally gifted. His twin sister Artemis ruled the wilderness, while Apollo became closely connected with civilization, knowledge, and the arts. But above everything else, he was known as the god of prophecy. According to myth, Apollo traveled to Mount Parnassus, where he confronted and killed a monstrous serpent named Python. The beast had guarded the sacred site for generations. With Python defeated, Apollo claimed the land as his own and established the Oracle of Delphi. Soon, it became the most important religious site in ancient Greece. Kings traveled hundreds of miles seeking Apollo's guidance before declaring war. Generals consulted the oracle before battles. Even ordinary people made the difficult journey, hoping to receive answers about their future. Whether the prophecies were clear or cryptic, one thing remained certain. The words spoken at Delphi carried enormous weight throughout the ancient world. If any god could be described as impossible to keep up with, it was Hermes. He served as the messenger of the Olympians, carrying commands between gods and mortals with incredible speed. His winged sandals and helmet became some of the most recognizable symbols in Greek mythology. But Hermes was much more than a messenger. He protected travelers, merchants, athletes, and diplomats. At the same time, he was also the patron of thieves, gamblers, and tricksters. That combination made him one of the most entertaining figures in mythology. According to one famous story, Hermes began causing trouble almost immediately after he was born. Still an infant, he sneaked away from his cradle, stole Apollo's sacred cattle, and cleverly disguised their tracks so no one could follow them. When Apollo eventually discovered the theft, he marched straight to Zeus to demand justice. Hermes denied everything. Then, as a peace offering, he presented Apollo with an instrument he had invented himself, the lyre. Apollo was so captivated by its beautiful music that he accepted the gift and forgave the theft altogether. It perfectly captured Hermes's personality: quick thinking, charming, and always one step ahead of everyone else. For the ancient Greeks, no harvest meant no survival. That made Demeter one of the most essential gods in their entire religion. She watched over agriculture, fertile land, and the changing seasons. But her most famous story was not about farming. It was about a mother's love. Demeter adored her daughter, Persephone. One day, while Persephone gathered flowers in a peaceful meadow, the ground suddenly split open. Hades emerged from the underworld and carried her away to become his queen. When Demeter discovered what had happened, she searched endlessly across the earth. For 9 days and 9 nights, she wandered without rest, refusing food, drink, or sleep. Eventually, she learned the truth. Heartbroken and furious, Demeter abandoned her duties as goddess of the harvest. Without her care, crops failed, fields withered, trees stopped bearing fruit. Before long, famine spread across the entire world. Humanity itself stood on the brink of extinction. Realizing the crisis, Zeus ordered Hades to release Persephone. But there was one complication. While in the underworld, Persephone had eaten several pomegranate seeds. According to ancient law, anyone who consumed food from the underworld could never leave it completely. A compromise was reached. Persephone would spend part of every year with Hades beneath the earth. The rest she would spend with her mother. The Greeks believed this explained the changing seasons. When Persephone returned, Demeter filled the earth with life once again. Among the Olympians, Hephaestus stood apart. He was not admired for his beauty, nor feared for his strength. Instead, he earned respect through his unmatched skill. Hephaestus was the divine blacksmith, the greatest craftsman the gods had ever known. Ironically, his life began with rejection. Born with a crippled leg, he was cast from Mount Olympus by Hera, who believed her son was too imperfect to remain among the gods. He survived the fall and devoted himself to mastering the art of metalworking. Years later, he returned stronger than anyone expected. Within his legendary forge, Hephaestus created weapons, armor, palaces, and inventions unlike anything the world had ever seen. Among his greatest masterpieces was the magnificent shield forged for Achilles during the Trojan War. Its intricate details were said to depict the entire world itself. Despite being mocked by many of the Olympians, Hephaestus repeatedly proved that intelligence and craftsmanship could rival raw power. If there was one Olympian who embraced celebration more than anyone else, it was Dionysus. He was the god of wine, theater, festivals, and ecstatic celebration. His followers believed that through music, dance, and ritual, they could temporarily escape the burdens of everyday life. Unlike the orderly ceremonies dedicated to many other gods, festivals honoring Dionysus were loud, emotional, and often completely unpredictable. Crowds filled the streets, music echoed through the cities, actors performed dramatic plays inspired by the gods and heroes. In fact, much of Western theatre traces its origins back to celebrations held in his honor. Yet Dionysus represented more than simple enjoyment. The Greeks believed wine possessed two sides. It could bring joy, friendship, and creativity. But it could also lead to recklessness, violence, and madness when taken too far. Dionysus embodied both. Like many Greek gods, he reminded humanity that every gift carried consequences. The gods of ancient Greece were never meant to be perfect. They lied, they cheated, they loved, they hated, they protected, and they destroyed. They argued like families, fought like rivals, and made mistakes that often changed the course of the world. That may be exactly why their stories have survived for more than 2,000 years. The Greeks did not create flawless beings to worship. They created immortal versions of themselves. Every god represented something deeply human. Zeus reflected power and ambition. Athena showed the value of wisdom. Ares embodied rage. Aphrodite revealed the irresistible pull of desire. Demeter captured the pain of losing someone you love. And Hades reminded people that death was not something to fear, but simply another part of existence. Long after the temples crumbled and the ancient world disappeared, their stories continued to inspire books, paintings, movies, and countless modern myths. Very few civilizations have left a legacy as lasting as ancient Greece, and thousands of years later, the gods of Olympus are still impossible to forget. If you enjoyed this journey through Greek mythology, make sure to subscribe because there are plenty more legendary stories waiting to be explored.